Here's a little non-storm news. In the midst of everything going on in the news right now and what is feared about this giant storm, a woman named Sally Yates roared back into the news today. This afternoon, the Washington Post and then Politico.com reported that the special counsel, Robert Mueller, has notified the White House that he and his team of prosecutors intend to interview multiple current and former White House officials in coming weeks. Now, the interviews haven't happened yet, and we don't have any dates yet as to when exactly the interviews are going to happen. But according to the Washington Post, that's because investigators first intend to review all the documents they've requested and that they expect to receive from the White House. Now, the reason that's an important and potentially juicy part of this news is because you can triangulate this a little bit. Based on what documents they've asked for and based on what people they're asking to interview, you can start to figure out what behavior by the president and his administration has found itself into Robert Mueller's crosshairs. And that's why fired former acting Attorney General Sally Yates is back in the news. You'll remember that on January 26th, which was not even a week after Trump's inauguration, Sally Yates, the acting Attorney General, left the Justice Department and personally went up to the White House to give the White House a warning, an urgent warning on a national security matter.
We were concerned that the American people had been misled about the underlying conduct and what General Flynn had done. And additionally, that we weren't the only ones that knew all of this, that the Russians also knew about what General Flynn had done. Not only did we believe that the Russians knew this, but that they likely had proof of this information. And that created a compromise situation, a situation where the national security advisor essentially could be blackmailed by the Russians. We told them that we were giving them all of this information so that they could take action.
They didn't take action. I mean, the Attorney General comes to the White House warning that the sitting national security advisor has been compromised by a hostile foreign government, that he could be being blackmailed. Right? It was such dramatic testimony from Sally Yates when we heard about it from her in Congress in May. It must have been an incredibly dramatic moment in the White House when she came to them with that totally unprecedented, terrifying warning. And it remains a mystery as to why the White House did nothing in response to that warning. They kept National Security Advisor Michael Flynn on for almost 3 further weeks. They really had no reaction to this warning at all until it ended up in the Washington Post. 18 days later, if the Post hadn't broken the story, maybe Flynn would still be there? Compromise, potential blackmail and all? We still don't know the full story of the undisclosed contacts that Trump National Security Advisor Michael Flynn had with the Russians during the campaign, during the transition, or once he was National Security Advisor in the White House. But today, the Washington Post reports that inaction by the White House after they got that extraordinary warning from Sally Yates about Michael Flynn, that inaction by the White House is apparently part of what Special Counsel Bob Mueller is now looking into. These are the names the Washington Post reported today in terms of who's been told to expect a White House interview. We don't know if this is the exhaustive list of people the special counsel plans to interview. Politico said it may be a dozen people, but at least we've got these names. Now, Don McGahn, he's the White House counsel, and James Burnham, that's McGahn's deputy. Those were reportedly the people who Sally Yates met with at the White House on January 26th, when she went up to the White House to give them the Mike Flynn warning, to which they didn't respond. So maybe that's what Mueller wants to interview them about. In terms of the other names on the list, we know that Sean Spicer sold the White House line that Mike Flynn didn't at all talk to the Russians about sanctions. Remember, Sean Spicer said that Mike Flynn contacted the Russian ambassador to offer his holiday greetings. No, of course it wasn't sanctions. So if the special counsel is starting to look at White House personnel who concocted misleading public statements intended to cover up real contacts with Russians, then Sean Spicer may indeed be in the hot seat. And because we now know misleading comments were concocted by the White House to disguise the true nature of the Trump Tower Russia meeting during the campaign, that may also explain why Hope Hicks and Josh Raffel are on the list of people the special counsel reportedly intends to interview. Both Hope Hicks, the White House communications director, and Josh Raffel, who is an aide to Jared Kushner, they were both reportedly on board Air Force One, and they were both reportedly involved in the creation of the false statement that was released by the White House in the name of Donald Trump Jr., which tried to disguise the nature of that campaign meeting with all those Russians. So the White House has reportedly been told to hand over documents on the crafting of that false statement about the Russia-Trump Tower meeting during the campaign, which was falsely explained by the White House. And they've reportedly been told to hand over documents about the firing of James Comey, which was also apparently falsely explained by the White House. And they've reportedly been asked to hand over documents about Mike Flynn, which means maybe we will finally find out why the White House didn't care. They didn't react at all. They didn't even seem surprised by the news that the Russians had compromised the most senior national security official in the new administration. Incidentally, I should just mention that many of the false public statements about Mike Flynn and him leaving the White House, many of those false public statements were made by the Vice President, Mike Pence. But so far, we do not see Mike Pence's name on the list of people that Robert Mueller wants to interview at the White House. The president's name isn't on that list either, yet. I'll watch this space.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.